The chief guest and other degrees already arrived. We will commence the program in 2 more minutes. Before I do the formal program, I'll get the chief guest and others on stage. Let me briefly tell you what's happening around MMA in next 2 months. And because we sent you so many mails and messages, and sometimes you might have missed it in your inbox, we do not want you to miss some great events of what's happening in MMA. Next event is happening on the 11th of Feb, our flagship event. India 2035, Driving Progress, Changing Global Paradigm. And we got some outstanding speakers. The inaugural session, we have Gopal Srinivasan and also General Shaukin, who is very, very closely connected with most of the armed force operations from a very highly decorated general. Then RBI Governor, former RBI Governor, Dr. Rangaradhan is there. We have lined up some outstanding speakers, a big list. There are 28 speakers we'll be talking from. So we are addressing on various sessions from morning 9:30 till evening 5:30. I can assure you it will be a great thing. And if you're not, registration is already closed. If you're not registered, not to worry. You can watch the entire program live. It's a live webcast actually. So look forward to seeing you on 11th. Then also 12th and 13th, we are doing a tech summit along with Indu. This is again only by invitation. That is continuity unbroken, building an architecture of resilience in the connected world. Again, we have some outstanding speakers all on technology. This is happening on 12th and 13th, again at Touch Coromandel. Then on 12th February, again, we have launch and discussion on AI, the rest of, and the illustrated introducer, again authored by Sairam. Then on 14th, we have interesting event on election. Talk on forecasting under uncertainty, lessons on poll predictions for leaders and managers. It's an online event. Note me, please, online. It is not happening physically. Former Chief Election Commissioner Krishnamurthy is there, Sriram Sheshadri, pepsologist, and also Arun Ram, editor of Times of India, Prime Point Srinivasa and Kumarasamy are the part of the team. Then we also have Darshan Jain at Time Links on 12th and 21st. Ambassador Ajay Bisaria is going to be coming and talking to us. He's going to talk to us on weathering the Trump storm, business strategy and tariff of the world. And the Ambassador, I think I'll walk miles to listen to Ambassador Ajay Bisaria is coming all the way from Delhi to us, talk to us. Then on 21st, again, we have GST simplified from compliance to burden, business advantage. We have some outstanding speaker, and this we are doing partner with Lakshmi Kumaran attorneys, and we have one of the surrounding who is part of the GST Council. Is the chief guest. He is going to be there with us that day. Then we have on 25th of Feb, we have Sangeeta, that book launch is there. Then we have MMA Glimpse Women Convention. Then one final thing I want to close it before I take it further. Talk on Ratan Tata's story. I think Mr. Arish Bhatt is author, director of Tata Group, and the former brand custodian of Tata is going to be there with us on this event. And ladies and gentlemen, coming to today's event, it's very, when Madam spoke to me, Vidya Shankar, I straight away we said yes, because this is a subject which we want to really get involved as a MMA. We do a lot of work on philanthropy. We do a lot of work on CSR. While we do work in the school, we could make out some of the schools where we work with poor children. They undergo some of the thing what has been explained by Madam and thing, which we have accounted, and what has been brought out. There are so many which goes unaccounted, unnoticed, unreported. That is what is sad, and that's why we wanted to do this, sensitize the people thing. And let me put your hand together to welcome our distinguished chief guest for this evening, other speakers. Dr. Muralidhar, senior advocate and former chief justice of Odisha High Court, and also author of the book Vidya Shankar Chakravarthy, and Dr. Vasanti Sundaram. May I request to please take your place on the dais, madam. The founder of the program is, let me formally deliver the formal welcome address on behalf of Madras Management Association. And let me warmly welcome all the viewers watching the program live on our channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our webcast. As usual, if you have any questions, the QR code, please send your questions. Those guests who are come here today, it's indeed a privilege to welcome each one of you. And many of you are guests of the author, Vidya. I know some of you are come for the first time. It's indeed a privilege to have you with us. And thank you for joining us this evening, the heavy traffic and on the Mount Road. But I can assure you, once you get into the system, get into a building, you feel good. It's a very comfortable place to be in. And MMA, just to tell you, it's established in 1956. We have over 8,000 members and we do some 750 events in a year. We do program on every aspect, almost every day there's a program. Just before this event, we had a training program for 300 people. So my team, it's a very efficient team, redone the whole thing and pushed out the 100 plus cars to accommodate all your cars. And that's what we do. Because of we do good work and the government recognizes we are the best management association in India for the last 15 years in a row. So that is really a proud moment for us. We have a number of things. We have digital magazine. We got a lovely library with 1.25 million papers. You all can come. And the format of the program for this evening is I'm going to request the chief guest to formally launch the book, and thereafter you will address the audience. Then Vidya Shankar Chakravarthy will speak to the author. Thereafter, Vasanti Sundaram will lead the conversation with Dr. Muralidhar and Vidya Shankar Chakravarthy. That's what is going to be the format of the event. All the people, why I'm stretching it a little bit, I could see some of the people are enjoying the refreshments. We don't want to deny that privilege. That's why 1 or 2 minutes I'm taking extra in my welcome address in the allotted time. So I think it will be coming at any moment. And for the audience who are here, there will be a Mentimeter on the screen. We don't circulate the mic, and you can see the Mentimeter and scan the questions and send. You can send your questions. In case you're not able to do, your telephone is not working, net is not there, please feel free to ask for the mic, and my team will come and hand over the microphone. But only thing, what is our experience is, when you give a microphone, then you deliver the lecture, people on the stage become really very difficult to manage. That's the reason we don't hand over the microphone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to request our chief guest to formally launch the book. Before I going to call him to come and launch the book, may I have the AV of our chief guest, please?
Dr. S. Muralidhar is a distinguished senior advocate of the Supreme Court of India and former Chief Justice of the Odisha High Court, widely respected for his work in constitutional law and human rights. Dr. Muralidhar's judicial career spans the Madras, Delhi, and Punjab and Haryana High Courts, culminating as Chief Justice before his designation as Senior Advocate in 2023. In 2025, Dr. Muralidhar was appointed chair of the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, reflecting his international standing and commitment to justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, very warm round of chief guest. And sir, now the most awaited part of this evening is the launch of the book. And now I may request the dignitary to please step forward and do the honor to launch the book, sir. Can I have the book, please? Thank you, sir, for doing the honor. May I request Dr. Muralidhar to please deliver his chief guest address. Dr. Muralidhar.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, MMA, for organizing this function, inviting me. I want to start by congratulating Vidya on this remarkable publication. Not an easy book to conceive of and to put together. And I want to thank Vasanti for extracting the book out of Vidya. This topic that Vidya is dealing with in this book is not easy. And many of these stories are not happy stories. So for people who are asking, how do children in India live? And how do they see the justice system? Vidya's book could be a good starting point. As all of you know, there are two broad categories in law, which are, I would say, very limiting in one sense. One category is called children in need of care and protection. So if it sounds a bit of a jargon, basically abandoned, neglected children, and how law looks at those children. The other category is children in conflict with the law. Children involved in crime, accused of crimes, and how they navigate the criminal justice system. The book straddles both these worlds because something unique about Vidya Chakravarthy is that she has served both the Juvenile Justice Board, the Juvenile Welfare Board, that is, now it's called the Child Welfare Committee, that looks at children in need of care and protection. But she's also served as member of the Juvenile Justice Board, which actually performs adjudicatory functions and conducts trials and determines the guilt or innocence of children brought before that board. It's of course presided over by a judicial magistrate, but the two other members play a very critical role in the outcome. And law itself expects these trials to be different from the trials that happen in regular courts. How far that's successful in happening is something that you can find out in Vidya's book. But very rarely do you find a person who straddled both the worlds. That is, being part of a juvenile welfare board and being part of the juvenile justice board. What is very important about this book, and I kept sharing this thought of mine with both the author and the person who has put the book together, Vasanti, that very often in law, we look for empirical data. And we are not able to get accurate data. It's like so many things in this country. Even today, if you go on the website and ask how many children does India have, it will take you back to the 2011 census, which is already 14 years old, and which does not give you an accurate figure at all. We very rarely come across, because none of these decisions of the juvenile justice boards are actually published anywhere for lawyers to refer or even law researchers to refer. So very rarely do we find first-person narratives, and this is a first-person narrative from a person who's been part of that system. So it's very valuable as a document for research, for planning for the future of children, knowing what the limitations of the law and the justice system are, and to see if there can be any course correction. Of course, like many other things in this country, this requires a lot of course correction. And going back to the drawing board, and it asks us to introspect. This book asks us to introspect on what is the kind of world children are finding themselves in, what is the kind of alternative we are offering them as society. So both these hard questions are answered, and not the kind of answers you would like to read. Of course, there are some positive stories, but of course there are not many stories which gives us hope. This book emphasizes the value of listening attentively and with empathy. Although the title of the book says, "Can you hear us?" the word "hear" should be substituted with the word "listen." And that's what Vidya is telling you when you read the book, that if you don't listen carefully, you will miss what children are actually trying to convey to all of us. As a person who's dealt with law for more than 4 decades, and I've myself been involved in cases of persons caught in the criminal justice system, not out of choice, but because of helplessness. It could be beggars seeking alms in the streets. It could be a sex worker soliciting work. It could be a wandering mentally health person. It could be just a pavement dweller. All these persons get ensnared in the criminal justice system. Usually there'll be a raid on a brothel house. There'll be raid on a place of worship where you always find, if you go to any Sai Baba temple on Thursdays, you'll find a large queue of beggars, right, waiting for alms. So the social welfare departments of all our governments in the states, where an anti-beggary law is still in force, will simply round up these people, take them to a magistrate, who will then mechanically remand them to what is called a beggar's home. So that is their point of entry into the whole criminal justice system. Likewise, a wandering mentally ill will again be produced before a magistrate and taken to a mental health institution. Earlier, they used to be taken to jails. So many of these people are entering, and a child in conflict with the law or a child neglected in need of care and attention, it is the police which comes into the first contact with these children, or the state. And then once you enter the criminal justice system, it is virtually impossible for you to exit that system. It's like a vortex. And when you exit it, you're again pushed back into the system like a revolving door. In fact, many of the stories that Vidya tells us, including child sex workers, their helplessness and how they're ensnared back, even the persons offering to post bail for them are persons working the system. Usually a brothel keeper will herself or himself offer bail as surety, and therefore back in the same trauma. So this book emphasizes the value of listening attentively and with empathy to the voices of the young in distress. It also reminds us that if we are prepared to learn from the errors of the past and act proactively to better the lives of today's children, there is hope for tomorrow's children. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, and I want to paint 4 scenarios before you. In August 2023, there was an incident in Tamil Nadu in a town called Nanganeri, far down south. A Dalit student studying in an aided school was attacked by upper caste boys, and when his younger sister tried to save him from being attacked, she too was attacked. Both were critically injured and barely survived after several rounds of surgeries. The reason for this attack was something that would surprise you. The reason for the attack is that the Dalit boy was performing very well in school. And the upper caste boys were envious of that. They would invariably taunt him, tease him, to a point that he stopped attending school. When such a bright student stops attending school, the principal is naturally concerned. He goes to the boy's house and asks him. The boy is reluctant to tell him what the problem is, and then very reluctantly tells him this is the real problem. The minute the upper caste boys know that this Dalit boy has spoken the truth to the principal, the next thing is he's attacked in his house. So the Tamil Nadu government was obviously worried because this earned it bad press, appointed Justice Chandru as a one-man committee, and like in so many other committees that Chandru is headed, he does it completely honorary. Now what is surprising is Chandru's report, and that is a must read for all of us. It says Nanganeri never ever. It was shocking for me to know that way back in 2015, when Tamil Nadu's government schools witnessed boys in those schools wearing colored wristbands. If you belonged to one of those upper castes, and within those upper caste stratification, you had to wear different color bands. And they would proudly display it. Now, if a girl student in that school belonging to, let's say, one of those upper castes is seen talking to a person of a different caste, these boys will report her to her family. Now, this pernicious practice, starting in the level of the schools, was sought to be controlled by the government by issuing a circular saying no more wristbands in schools. The reaction to this, and all this I'm saying it because it's in Chandru's report, The reaction to this is one of the major national parties raises a protest saying preventing this practice is against Hinduism. The second scenario I want to talk about is what happened in Muzaffarnagar in Uttar Pradesh. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but it's still there on the YouTube. You will find this is a private school in Uttar Pradesh where students of class 7 are queuing up before the teacher of the class. Queuing up for what? To slap a young Muslim boy at the instruction of the teacher. The teacher is telling them that this boy he's not able to recite the multiplication tables. And Mohammedan mothers are very remiss in how they bring up their children. So the students are asked to queue up to slap the boy. I mean, it caused such an outrage. The Supreme Court took up the case. The Supreme Court intervened, shifted him to a different school. And under the orders of the Supreme Court now, I think he's getting rehabilitated. But this was deeply scarring on the collective psyche of the nation. That at the level of the schools, we are introducing communalism, we are introducing casteism, and these are very troubling things for India's future. There is a Pahalgam attack on the next day morning, and I'm talking of prominent, more prominent schools in Delhi. The school children of one class will turn to their Muslim classmate and call him Pakistani. So this kind of a poison is being injected among children. And we have to do as a society something about it. We can't expect the state to do anything about it. This is a collective responsibility of us as a society. What are we exposing our children to? Only yesterday, I don't know how many of you read this, lawyers would have read this. It was before a bench of Justice Nagaratna. A boy in Madhya Pradesh in Indore had used the Instagram and created a handle in which he was posting memes where he would belittle and ridicule his own teachers and with communal overtones. He was rusticated. His rustication was upheld by the High Court and they're now in appeal before the Supreme Court. So the comment of Justice Nagaratna is very telling. She says all this starts at home. This boy must have learnt it at home. So how we conduct our lives amidst children is very important. We can't blame if tomorrow's children become overtly communal, overtly casteist, and very far from our constitutional values. Our constitution's preamble talks about fraternity, respecting the dignity of the individual, and we are very far from that. So this is a second troubling scenario. A third troubling scenario has just happened last week. 3 sisters, jumped from the terrace of their apartment building in Ghaziabad, committing suicide. What was the reason for the suicide? The parents were telling the girls, stay off your mobile phone, stay off social media. But the girls had got addicted to it. They were all part of a game, online game, where you are assigned certain tasks. And this is not the first time this is happening. Suicides by teenagers. There is a whole book written about it. I've been reading about it, The Anxious Generation, it's called. People are interested, I'm sure Vidya will be. This digital addiction is causing depression amongst our youngsters, driving them to extreme acts of violence against others and against oneself. So this is something that, again, we should all be deeply concerned about. The complete involvement and overtaking of the lives of our children. And I'm not talking of just teenagers. I'm talking of toddlers and infants. You know, the other day I'm sitting in the flight, next to me is a mother who's unable to control her 3-year-old. Earlier we would use pacifiers, right? Today the pacifier is this device. The minute the device is given to this 3-year-old, complete silence, complete attention, focus. And what does that focus on? A moving image. So you're introducing 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds to digital devices, And that's having a very, very pernicious adverse effect on our children. The fourth scenario is a very pleasant one. The other day I was reading the Bal Puraskar Awards. What are children capable of? I don't know how many of you follow these Bal Puraskar Awards. It's something that will give you hope for the future. There is a young boy in rural India who saved his father's life from being attacked by a crocodile. One boy saved 37 people from being killed by fire. These are not ordinary acts of bravery. It's remarkable. The Bal Puraskar Awards also honors child prodigies. Of course, it has its own set of issues. If I have time during the discussion, we can talk about that. It also talks about high achievers in sports, which again has its own flip side. But there is some hope left in those Bal Puraskar Awards. We should know and we should remind ourselves that 1/4 of the world's population is of children between the ages of 0 to 18 years. In real numbers, this is 220 crores of children worldwide. India has 44 crore children. 74% of these children live in rural areas. We have 1.1 crore child labor. I'm emphasizing these numbers because what statistics do is gives you percentages. And it's very misleading. In India, never go by percentages, go by numbers. I would advise every statistician who's in this room, every student researcher, never go by percentages in India. Never go get impressed when the government says, oh, compare the last year's World Hunger Report to this year's World Hunger Report. We've fallen by 0.2%. Means nothing. Which still means several lakhs of children are going hungry. They're malnourished. Many children are not born. They're not allowed to be born. Many girl children in this country are still not allowed to be born. They are what are called the missing children. We still have child marriages. We have 1.1 crore child labor. And you know how they count child labor? Children in formal modes of employment, not informal modes. I'll make a distinction. There are children in carpet weaving. There are children employed in brick kilns. There are children involved in garment making. There are children in agriculture, children in fishery, children in mining, children in food and entertainment services. All this is counted for. What is not counted for? Children in prostitution, children involved in begging, children involved in criminal activities. Many of them are couriers for drug trade. So if we actually start counting the children who are being economically exploited, the number will be far higher. Why am I saying all this? You read Vidya's book, you will make the connections. A child who's running away from exploitation at home ends up being exploited by the police or exploited by a criminal gang and remains scarred for life. So when Vidya's organizations like the Relief Foundation go and reach out to those children, they're not always successful because the scarring is so deep. To get that child integrated into society is a Herculean task, and only someone with perseverance like Vidya Chakravarthy can tell us very frankly where she's succeeded and where she's not. Usually when you write a book, you'll say, oh, I did this, I did that. Nobody admits to failing at something. This is what I found so heartening about this book, that Vidya does not mind admitting to all of us, listen, I failed here and I succeeded there. She wants us to, like Vasanti says somewhere, I think she lays it bare before all of us, to actually pose that challenge and question before all of us. Is this the kind of world we want to offer to our children? Every time the street crossings in Delhi, you have the Banjarans and the Nuts. The Nuts are the people who perform, street performers. You will find contortionists, children being trained to be contortionists, twisting their bodies beyond one's imagination. And they're performing out there in the streets in the cold winter of Delhi, sometimes bare-bodied. Now, they're also being exploited for economics, for somebody's earning. Children also face discrimination. If you're a disabled child, you find ridicule in school. One of the popular misconceptions is children in their natural state are very kind, generous, compassionate. Not at all. Children can be extremely cruel. Taunting in class for either being too tall or too short, too thin or too fat, having a pronounced accent. Children are just readily given to ridiculing. That's very common. That's the natural state of being a child. That's why the teachers play such an important role, the families play such an important role. How do you remove that element of bias into which children are naturally born? We celebrate when children participate in beauty contests. We celebrate when children participate in Indian Idol, American Idol, British Idol. We don't know the exploitation that's happening. The narrowing of the spaces for the child to grow. Child prodigies, we've had that. Number of examples. I can talk of Flute Mali, who's a child prodigy. But, life which is completely, controlled by other forces. Mandolin Srinivas, for instance. So even performers who could be prodigies could be deprived of a regular childhood. And that has its own ramifications. Religious exploitation. I worry, when somebody is anointed, when the person is only 10 years old or 8 years old, into monkhood. It could be the Tibetans, it could be the Jains, it could be the all your matas. Even nuns, monasteries, there's a certain pattern to religious institutions. And how these religious institutions exploit children is something that we are hesitant to talk about. But we must. Because all of this deprives children of their regular childhood, and it has its own, flip side. I think I've covered about all the, concerns that I have. To just go back to the examples I gave, we have to bring out these stories that have been brought out in the past, but you have to continuously bring them out. Because every generation needs to know their children, and every generation's children need to know their system. Every child that is born is being born into a world of chaos, into a zone of conflict. I'm looking at the Rohingya children. I'm looking at the Syrian refugee children. I'm looking at the Palestinian children. We have a whole generation of what are called stateless children. They can't get papers. They won't be recognized as citizen of any country. What happens to these children? What is the kind of future that we are offering these children? These are questions we must ponder. This book has stories of migrants. In this city, we have Bengalis, we have Biharis, we have Assamese, we have Mizos, we have Manipuris, both Meiteis and Kukis. I don't know how many of you are aware of all of this. Do you know the trouble those children will have communicating? And those children are not in this city out of choice. Sheer helplessness. And how indifferent are we to the plight of these children is something that Vidya is asking us to reflect on. For those who want an easy introduction into life of children, there's a huge collection of writing, but there are also films. Films that have influenced me, I can share with you. One is, of course, Oliver Twist. Both the Dickensian novel and the several versions of films that have been made. A direct introduction to the Victorian system of dealing with children in conflict with law and children in need of care and attention. That model, that colonial model is carefully preserved and continued despite its failures in our country. Till date, every observation home is a penal custodial institution. Corporal punishment is meted out. Children are not strictly segregated according to age. And every such institution becomes a system of learning all the wrong things. And we have no care of mixing semi-adults with young adolescents, with infants. We have no problem with all of that. The other film that's influenced me is Jojo Rabbit. I don't know how many of you have seen it. It's a 2019 film. You must watch it because how children are introduced into a certain kind of politics, how they're fed poison, how they're brainwashed. This is something that you must watch. A heartwarming film, and I'm sure Vidya and Vasanti will agree with me, is Kaka Muttai. So Kaka Muttai is a Manikandan film of 2015. It's again a must watch. And one of the earlier films of Children in Conflict with the Law is Salam Bombay, a Meera Nair film of 1988, which brings together many of the issues that Vidya is talking about in this book. So what I found remarkable is it's not just about stories about children that Vidya encountered during her tenure as chairperson of the Juvenile Welfare Board and member of the Juvenile Justice Board, but it makes those connections. An exploited child, a child in child labor, a child in prostitution, a child who's child of a sex worker, a child who's a child of a prisoner. You get the complete panoply of cases. I must again compliment her for being able to unburden, because the period she's talking of is 1999 to 2008. She's talking of 4 districts: Chennai, I think Kanchipuram, Vellur, and Arakkonam, Tiruvallur. So these are the very neighboring districts of this city. But one would hope that situation would be very different from 2008. Actually, it's no different. I must share with all of you. And what is happening in these districts is happening all over the country. And there is something that we have to do as a society. And I think it's Vidya's urgent appeal to all of us to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Muralidhar, for that inspiring and thought-provoking address, connecting so many dots. And I know some of them, you read the newspapers, you feel bad. Even this morning we read that one father killed a child at Andhra Pradesh because he wanted his family wife to contest the election, actually, because there's not more than 2 children permitted. So what a sad way to do this to the children, very, very unfortunate. Now I'm going to request the author, Vidya Shankar Chakravarthy, to come and share her thoughts. Before that, let me also have an AV on the author, as well as Vasanti, who will be leading the conversation thereafter with Dr. Muralidhar and Vidya. Can I have the AV, please?
Vasanti Sundaram is a biographer, author, actor, and former media professional with over 35 years of experience across journalism, broadcast media, and corporate communications in India and Dubai. Vasanti's career includes radio and television broadcasting, screenwriting for Sambhar Salsa, interviews with the presidents of India and several global leaders, and acting roles in feature films and web series including Maharani Season 4 on Sony Live. A widely traveled writer and moderator, Vasanti brings a cross-cultural, conversational approach to interviews and live events. Vidya Shankar Chakravarthy is an author, social entrepreneur, and child rights advocate with over 3 decades of experience in India's social sector, and the founder of Relief Foundation, working at the intersection of juvenile justice and community-anchored early childhood education. A chemical engineer from AC Tech, Anna University, Vidya also leads Awaken to Life, focusing on child rights, POSH, juvenile justice, and CSR evaluation, and holds advanced qualifications in child rights law and Montessori education. A recipient of the Manva Seva Dharma Samvardhini and Rotary Vocational Service Awards, Vidya is a widely traveled speaker, writer, and compiler of Sakhi, a premarital preparation manual for youth.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I request Vidya to share her thoughts, the book is available for you to bring at the outside, and the author has kindly agreed to sign the book and give it to you so that it will be a good, memorable collection for you. You can do it during after the break, after the session. Now I request Vidya Shankar to please come and share her thoughts.
Most respected Dr. Muralidhar, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, my dear friend Vasanti, Usha Ramesh of Brand Up, Rotary Club of Madras East, members, the club that battered for my work in the juvenile homes, friends from the press and media, all invitees in this August gathering. This day marks a new beginning. that figures in the advent of a new view on child rights. This is what I feel. And the role of adults. What I had locked up in my heart and never thought of bringing out as a book became one at the prompting of a few elders in my life. It took the Himalayan patience of Vasanti to bring it out of me, and I'm happy to see it in this form, outside of me now. The journey of those 10 years would not have been possible without the able support of government staff who rallied with me in the Department of Social Defense, senior police officials, several NGOs, members of the civil society, who came forward, spoke up, and supported and advocated for children. The future of India lies in liberating its children from the clutches of adult-centric systems that handle them. As Dr. Muralidhar was speaking, so many other instances where, in this book, only so much could be written, right? But thoughts came rushing on how many cases I have not recorded, and Vasanti will get angry with me. So, because she really prodded me into it, I recollect every case of trafficking, and when we raided buses to find out children who were picked up by people to be sent to other states in droves. How to stop this? Police cannot do it. We did. In fact, the raids happened with the help of police. But then they all raised their hands and they said, we can't do much. That's all. So the public conscience is the third eye who needs to watch out and who need to move their gaze from the screen and really look at the lives of children who are around us, where we have learned to selectively insulate ourselves and not see what is actually happening with the synchronicity of eye, heart, and the mind. So this is what your eyes may see. As he said, can you hear us? You must replace it with, can you listen to us? Can you first of all hear that sound, that cry? Only then that cry's syllables will make sense to be heard. So my plea is to first tune your ear to even hear those cries. Without understanding that the children have a voice and they have a capacity to speak. I must, thank friends from the media who supported me during that time. There was Ramya Kannan, there's Kritika here. They really brought life to the live events happening there. They stirred the public conscience. And without such support during my tenure, I don't know how it all happened, but now the media is hijacked severally by so many other things without understanding that the future of the country lies in children. So it is really the time for making to happen the second freedom movement. The freedom for children, our children, from the clutches of these kind of systems that don't help. So if we have to come together as one takeaway from this event, it should be that we cry out, listening to children, making their voice resonate with us and echo louder. I wish to thank everyone in my family and friends who have been my cheerleaders, working in such a difficult, area, gravitas area that it is. It's not easy. And we will be talking about it in the chat. Special thanks goes to Vasanti for writing up this project with so many iterations, prodding me, pushing me, shouting at me, screaming, making me go deeper. It was a very difficult task, I'll say. But I managed to bring out as much as I could, and memories will go on. Possibly the second edition will happen with the additions that have been triggered for now. I wish to thank MMA for being, readily accepting and making this place available and validating and signing up immediately for the event. There's so much to talk. There's less time, but I'm happy to answer questions and also add up during the fireside chat. I thank you so much for being here, and this is an important day in my life, and I'm glad I'm sharing it with you all. Thank you so much.
Check. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and to all those who've joined us by the live stream. Is it on? Is it going on? Thank you, everyone who's watching us. It's been, working on this book has been a true privilege and a profound learning experience for me. This book is not just about one woman's story. It's about the countless lives she has touched. If you read the book, you'll know about that. The systemic changes that she fought for, and the power of facing very painful memories with absolute honesty and vulnerability. And thank you for trusting me to write this book. Yes, I scolded you a lot, but then you have the book here today. I'm very honored to have you with us on the panel. We have a quick 20 minutes chat, and then we'll open the floor for a couple of questions before we wrap up this evening. Dr. Muralidhar, from your time on the bench and now in international human rights, what does justice, you spoke at length, but could you briefly summarize what justice looks like when a child is involved from your experience on the bench?
I think it looks very harsh, very intimidating, and very confusing. I'll tell you one example. You sit as a family court judge, and you have to decide an issue of custody of a child, whether the custody should be given to the mother or the father. And you are supposed to have this conversation with this 5-year-old or 9-year-old. And you have to determine what are called the best interests of the child. And the child asks you a very simple question. The child says, "Why should I choose?" And the justice system has no answer to that. You're forcing the child to make a choice that the child does not want to make. Because the law requires you to determine what the choice of the child could be. And the children are invariably torn in broken relationships between switching loyalties between one parent and the other. And that scars. So the justice system is actually unable to cope with it. And she sat in the Juvenile Justice Board, she'll agree with me. After 5-6 cases of like this on a daily basis, you get emotionally drained. It takes a toll on you as a judge. And, you worry for the child, you worry for the parents, and you worry for the future.
Yeah.
So this is something of the failure of the justice system. I'm talking of a non-criminal justice system scenario. Criminal justice system scenario is far worse. You have judges who look at a 6-footer, 15-year-old who's developed a mustache. And he says, "This can't be a child." It's so easy to make this mistake. Because he's muscular and he's well-built, doesn't mean he's stopped being a child. This whole regressive law that we have, that you've reduced the age of criminal responsibility for serious offenses from 18 to 16, is going to have very pernicious effect. You're going to keep these children with adults in jails. It's a shocking scenario, how we are pushing our own children into crime. And there are documented studies to show that you have to keep a child who's at that cusp. The ages of 16, 17, 18, this is the cusp years. If you lose the child into a world of crime, you lose the child forever. So both these scenarios are a bit worrying for me when I see children facing the justice system.
So from what you say, do our systems, do they really understand a child's vulnerability, or they look at them as little adults?
not little adults, like I told you in the scenario, if the crime is heinous, they stop looking at the child as a child. They only look at the child as a criminal. And we say we have a way of, rejecting, that you're unfit to be in society. We collectively decide whom we should keep out of society. We do this with a whole range of people.
Yeah.
We do this with sex workers, we do this with beggars, we do with street dwellers, as if they have no space in our society. We have decided they are the so-called rejects. And we have produced them. We don't take responsibility for producing them. Heinous crimes, and Vidya's book is replete with those examples. Completely ruthless kind of killings by children. It has a background. If the child has been continuously tortured at home, subject to corporal punishment, you harden the child. If a child has lived in the streets, you should watch Salam Bombay. If the child has lived in the streets, the child has to survive. The child has to survive gangs. It's not easy. So I'm just saying that we've failed to introspect because we think, let the state take care of this child. The state is incapable of taking care of children.
The book gives a lot of examples of children in railway stations, particularly it's a hideout for them. So Vidya, this question is for you. While we were working on this book for the last 2 years, we have invested all our emotions on it. So from working on this book, you often said that some children prefer staying in juvenile homes than returning to their families. What does that say about the families they are running away from?
So, it's fine? Okay. So the homes that they have ran away from belong to a certain society. And they are running away from poverty. They are running away from drudgery of education. They are running away from abusive parents. They are running away from a society that has not prioritized them or their safety. So they know this, they sense this, and they feel that they are their own masters and they can look after themselves far more safely than being in a vulnerable setting in a known area. So that's why they come out, and some of them have said that they do not want to go back to their homes because they know that they'll be pledged again. They will be rented out again. They will be sold again. And they will be exploited again. So I still remember, I'm digressing. There was a little boy of 9 years, not even 9, I think he was 7.5 or 8. He was a bag lifter in the T Nagar, Ranganathan Street. He explained to me exactly 8 ways in which they cheat the customer, and he says, I'm a master in all of it. So, but he says, if you want me to change, he said very politely and softly, he says, if you want me to change, I'm living in the Tada region, we have brokers, they will come and take me back again. So this is something that we cannot really help, and that time Child Welfare Committee was not so empowered, or it was not so much thing. So within a matter of 15 days, the Juvenile Justice Board, the concerned broker got a High Court order and we had to release the child. So in those points, I have felt a victim myself of such cases.
So obviously this whole tenure took a toll on you as a parent. Like during the day, you would listen to about 30 to 40 cases of child abuse, sexual harassment among children, juveniles. And then you'd come home to your children, 2 children, who would expect you to be a normal mother. How did you make that switch day in and day out?
So that is a very, very private, personal chapter that happened that period, which is very difficult to put into words. It's impossible to say, but I can tell you there was a big learning for me in that time, that I understood the difference between rights ensured and rights neglected or not given, not entitled. So that actually defined the fault line for me. So that was the way I could see children, you know, it was tossing between two lives, two worlds actually. It was so hard and it was not easy. You know, for a civil society member to do it as a job, it's different. You just go there, you just sign some papers like, you know, just as Murali, they were saying, some of them, many of them, they just sign it as a job. But then this juvenile system didn't permit that, at least for me. I entered the lives and the hearts and the souls of the children, and I could not run a second life. So one thing I will say is that today my children are well settled and they're leading righteous lives. I'm thankful for that. Whether I've been the ideal mother for them, I do not know. I may not have been, but at least that has been something which I was gifted with, and I'm happy that way. So the fault line, defining that fault line happened during that tenure, I will say.
So such a lovely answer that you say that I may not be a good mother, but then I'm sure your children are proud of you. We are proud of you. And a lot more children out there are proud of you. I have a question for the audience before I go to the next question to the panelists. How many of you have seen child justice up close? How many of you know what it is about or what it feels like? Could you raise your hands? I don't see any up there. So both of you, Dr. Muralidhar, could you explain quickly to them what a juvenile home looks like to people who have never seen it or even thought about it?
I think I should be able to say.
Both, yes, okay.
So, the juvenile home per se is for children who are deprived of liberty, right? I mean, like that's a basic baseline. Those who have been moved out of their comfort zone and who have come here not out of a will or as a happy alternative. So, the basics of food, shelter, clothing is provided. In fact, I would have written it in the book. Basics are provided. Optimal care is provided. Some kind of education is provided. But it's not that there are evil, cruel people looking after them. I won't say that. There's a lot of awareness and there's a lot of public view now. So there is a certain conscience that is there in the staff looking after them, but the mob dynamics inside the mob that stays inside these homes. It's very difficult for a child to navigate. As he said, the distinction of ages doesn't happen. There are a lot of abuses happening within peers inside the homes, which most of it doesn't get reported. In fact, Kritika will remember so many instances where I had to kind of tone it down. And I had to say that, we are working close, let's try to do the story, but in a little mellowed down way. We have seen so many cases where children have wandered away from the juvenile home, brought back and beaten up. So many instances where the child does not want to stay there. So that is how it is. There is a play area, huge areas. The campuses will be more than at least 2-3 acres, 5 acres, 50 acres in some places, but the children will be restrained within a particular area. They will be given basic, as I said, these things. So,
Dr. Murali.
I think I'm going to paint a darker picture. One is we must understand in law, I use the word penal custodial. So we don't have a different set of rules governing these institutions. They are actually extensions of the jail itself. Prisons. So all the jail rules, the rules of discipline, apply to all these institutions. Whether they are observation home for boys, observation home for girls. Then the staff and the officers in charge are all part of the larger law enforcement machinery. So a police officer, and this is true, Vidya will bear this out, a police officer who has a doubtful integrity in the regular police service will be shifted to the prisons.
Yes. In fact,
so these are the dumping grounds for inefficient or corrupt officers. And we suddenly expect them to behave very well here. In fact, here there's a golden opportunity for them. Corruption is much higher, abuse is much higher, answerability is next to zero. No accountability, because we call this invisibilizing a population. The minute you put people in an institution, you invisibilize them. The rules of visiting is restricted. The rules of exiting is even more severely restricted. So children find this as a hellhole. There are so many instances of escapes, runaway children. Children will say anything but going back to that home. And after the POXO legislation, which is another failed legislation, I think we can comfortably say that, you have a 15-year-old girl child who's run away with her boyfriend. Both are under the POXO Act. Okay, he has committed an offense because he's 17 years old. She's only 15, she cannot give consent. So this is a crime. He's going to face some trial because of that. She's asked, do you want to go back to her parents? She knows her parents will kill her. And we are not exaggerating. Honor killings are still happening. That girl child will simply be killed to save the family's honor. So she doesn't want to go back to the parents. They say, we'll send you to this home. Anyone who's been at that home even for 2 hours will know it's a hellhole. But she's left with no choice. And as a judge, we're merrily sending these children, okay, you don't want to go back to your parents, you go to this home. And there's a lot of exploitation by other inmates. There are some seasoned inmates, no separation in age. And when it is a boys' observation home, it's just unbearable, because sodomy is regularly practiced. And there is a whole instance, a very traumatic incident in Bihar, in this place called Muzaffarpur, or is it, I think it's Muzaffarpur, where they found that these observation homes for girls were themselves being used as brothels, where children were being supplied from there to politicians, to other people, powerful people in the locality. And many of them were getting killed and buried. Like I said, it's invisibilizing. So nobody knows what's happening. Likewise, in other parts of the country too, the trafficked children, they're rescued, they'll be sent to these homes. Look at the irony. You raid a brothel, you rescue a trafficked Nepali child, who's this 13-year-old in Chennai, and you'll send her to the observation home for girls here. From one hellhole to the other. So I think we have to completely relook at this whole way of dealing with children in conflict with the law and children in need of care and protection. And actually, the lines are not so, thick or, hard lines. They're actually very nebulous. Every child in conflict with the law is a child in need of care and protection. Yes. If you have to ask me to describe what is the learning that you do from Vidya's book, it is this. And I'll repeat this: every child in conflict with the law is a child in need of care and protection.
Yes. I'll take you on that line, children in conflict with the law. Let's take a look from our side, the common man's side. What is the biggest misconception that we have, that the public has, about children in conflict with the law?
Not just in conflict with the law, about any child. The biggest misconception we have is that an obedient and a disciplined child is a happy child. Biggest misconception.
Well said. I will say the misconception is that, because I've been in the criminal justice system of the juveniles, criminalizing the child, pointing at the intent. So they say that the intent, the child has a criminal intent and has plotted and all that. See, what my poster has always been that the child has a whole lifetime left. Even if he's an accomplice, he has been an accomplice to the adult criminal. So the system is so morphed on these points. And they criminalize these children, and finally there is a black mark, though the juvenile justice system says that you cannot black mark and put it as a criminal code on the child after completing his this thing. There should no history sheet. Still, You know, I have to tell you this, I was a visitor to the Pudal prison also. I was appointed by the government. And I've told her, when I went there for the visit, Madam, எப்படி இருக்கிறீங்க? சரி, என்னடா நீ எங்க இருக்க? ஆமா, எனக்கு அங்கேருந்து தூக்கி இங்கே போட்டுட்டாங்க. So when you look at these children, they have come from need of care and protection. They have gone to conflict with the law as in the juvenile homes. They have graduated to prisons. So what, as a system, as a society, we have failed children. What are we talking of liberation, freedom, technological advancements, going to the moon?
So what is the need of the hour? What is the most urgent thing that needs to be done but barely or rarely spoken about?
One is, I was very frustrated in the last 2 days trying to get accurate statistics about Indian children. You know, it's shocking to know that we still go back to 2011 census. I mean, where are we? 14 years down the line. And we've stopped publishing statistics on children because either we are ashamed or we just want to be in denial. You know, if I don't know, I don't have to do anything about it. That seems to be the attitude. Like I told you about the hunger indices. We are performing quite poorly on those indices. But we just dismiss off that whole thing saying, oh, it's a foreign conspiracy. Somebody wants to paint India in poor light, is talking about malnourishment and, starvation deaths. Nothing like that happens. You know, the number of stunted children in India, it's shocking. 74% of India's children lives in the villages, even today. The number of children who don't get full nutrition and therefore don't attain full healthy childhood is quite alarming. And we shouldn't look at percentages, we should look at real numbers. And we're not able to get those real numbers. So statistics is one urgent need, because unless you know what the problem is, you don't even start dealing with it. The second is, all forms of exploitation are not accounted for. I talked about begging, I talked about, prostitution, trafficking, smuggling. The number of children involved in all these activities, child soldiers. You know, this whole Salwa Judum in Chhattisgarh, it's a government-sanctioned plan to arm children. We are giving arms as a state government. We are giving arms to 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, training them in the use of arms. And this was questioned in the Supreme Court, said to be illegal, but through a legislative device, they've again brought back the same thing, and it's still continuing. And it's not just the state. Even the extremist groups, the criminal gangs in the country, they all use children. So the exploitation of child labor is not only in these areas that we talked about, but in all other areas. And that is never accounted for in the statistics. Third, our homes should be made safe spaces for children. There's a lot of violence practiced against children in our homes. We are in denial and we have a veil of secrecy. POCSO cases before the court show us that over 70% of the perpetrators of sexual exploitation in children are inside our homes, are inside of our larger families. And repeatedly, if you read those judgments, you will get to know how bad the situation is. We have a complete veil of secrecy. We talked about, the Catholics, the churches abusing children. That's only one part of one religious denomination. But it cuts across religious denominations. Almost every form of religion which inducts children into this whole monastic life, they all have stories of sexual abuse. So we shouldn't shut our eyes to this, what happens in our immediate circle, within our families and within our societies and within our congregations. And it's high time we actually did something about it.
Yes, I feel that it has to go beyond the system. Public consciousness must rise. Priorities on focused child safety procedures and norms must be, and it cannot happen because of some system. It can happen only when the public are engaging and are willing to engage, and there are platforms where children can express and public can speak up for children. So this is my call for action, that civil society members must partake as a process, get educated on children's rights, get educated on what systems are, and then proceed to be a system participant in the Child Welfare Committee, in the Juvenile Justice Board. People must pledge their time. All the time goes on the screen. What is shown on the screen is not going to define the future of our country. The country's children need safety. So the next 10 years, our country must focus on child safety policies and systems. Only then we can be sure that our great country will become the even greater.
My last question for this evening. I see many young people sitting in the audience. My question, if a young person were to read this book and decide to dive right into public service or child justice, what is the one single piece of advice you both would like to give them? And we'll close the evening. We'll open the floor for questions. Vidya.
Start volunteering. I think my colleague Murli is here. He was a software professional. He started volunteering first. For several years, he volunteered before he approached me. And that's how, ever since, we have a culture in Relief Foundation, in my organization, and I've also spread this to other organizations. Please start volunteering for children and for safe communities. Find time for it. Read about it. Get educated. Speak to people. Start engaging. Because only then, there will be opening up of the floodgates of information on road. Really, things are happening. So that is my first advice or information for people.
Yeah, my advice is something different. I would advise an exploited child not to read this book. Because that child will just have to revisit the child's own trauma. I think what we need to do as a society is get the more privileged children to interact with the less privileged children.
Yes.
When I was Chief Justice of Odisha, I really moved to an idea of how from the public schools and even private schools, students in the standards of 11th and 12th, because you need some maturity, should go and meet their counterparts, not only in villages, but even in some of these observation homes. The child-to-child communication can be very different from the way the adult communicates with the child. Everyone in control of these institutions are adults, including some well-meaning person like Vidya. And a child will open up only so much to an adult.
Yes.
And a boy will open up even less to a female. So you need to make repeated visits to get that trust. Because some adult has exploited that child. Some adult has exposed the secret of that child and made that child more vulnerable. So the children-to-children interaction is, because we put them in silos, we've ghettoized them behind walls of these institutions. We should allow children to breach those walls and interact with other children in society. That is one way forward.
Thank you so much. With that, we come to the end of this chat. Thank you all for joining us and reflecting with us and engaging with us on a subject that asks something of us. Oh, what is that?
There's a question.
I think there's a question from the audience. Would you like to ask yourself or shall I read it out? Okay.
Yeah.
How can society shift from reactive intervention to prevention when it comes to child at risk? This is asked by a person called Prasad. You could present yourself. Prasad? Oh, it's come online. Okay. Who would take this answer?
Yeah, the chain of risk is all well drawn out. Let's talk of children getting onto a train without a ticket and landing up in a different. So in our railway stations, all our major city railway stations, every day children are landing up. Yeah. Whether it's Delhi, Bombay, even Chennai. And it's the railway magistrates and police who are dealing with it. Some organizations like Vidya's have set up some help desks, but that needs to increase. We need to take that logical step. We have to anticipate some of these things and provide those safe spaces and reintegration of those children. So we'll have to provide, some mechanism to make that happen. And a civil society by volunteering for that.
Thank you, Dr. Muralidhar. We have the next question for Vidya. Uh,
From your experience.
yeah, you can take
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Where does the system fail the child at the most? Policy. We have very progressive policies, I'll say. No doubt. There's a lot of progressive policies in place, but implementation lies in the hands of human beings, right? So many of them aren't there yet, or they don't see it from the child's view. So seeing an issue from the child's view is what, in fact, Dr. Muralidhar was also emphasizing. That is not happening. How does a child see an education system like a school? And I don't know how many of you know that a school, the entire school model was brought straight down from the prison model. Just think about it. We have everything. You can put a tick mark. There are about 17 parameters you can tick off which are similar to a prison. So we have policies in place that are, we are signatories of the UNCRC, we have policies that are progressive, but when it comes to implementation, we have people with the deprived childhood who are now adults and who thinks, why do children need so much freedom? I never enjoyed. Look at me, I am such a good person and I am a very, successful person. So they are, the change is so difficult to make. They want to do only in increments. So the problem is in implementation and also the societal attitude. There is sympathy, but no proactive engagement.
We have another question for you, Vidya, from Sanya Sharma. She says, what can we do to truly empower and protect vulnerable children? I think you've spoken at length, but perhaps you can add to that.
Yeah, so we must move from feeling sympathetic to feeling responsible. I think the summary lies in that. Nobody created situations for children except the society and and its adult people. So how can we look at children differently with the eye that the child looks from? What is the child's view of? So for example, when a child is in the classroom, for example, that's the easiest to know. Leave out juvenile home. In a classroom, morning everybody gets up and say, "Good morning, miss." It's usually what happens. The child is never asked. The child is asked to tell your name. All adults will say, "What is your name?" Has any adult said, "My name is this, what is your name?" Just one flip. Yeah, you always do it. Yeah, so there are people so I'm talking, many of you are converted, I will say that.
Also sitting down
at the level of the child. Exactly, eye level. So this is a whole new way of looking at children. To think of what they feel when this is done. To think of what they will go through if this is offered to them. This is what.
So Malini's question I'll take. Yeah. So Malini makes a misconception on using the adjective progressive before legislation. The legislation is actually not progressive. In fact, it's one of the faults that we never truly introspect. We never ask, where did we go wrong with this legislation? And what can we do to set it right? First mistake. Second mistake, we don't have people trained in implementing this law. The same policeman who's, firing tear gas at a protester or, beating someone below his knee for a traffic offense is suddenly supposed to become very gentle with his child. How can he be? He's the first point of contact. And, that's a second failure. Third is a magistrate is doing 20 other things. This is one other case he has to deal with. Even if he sits in a juvenile board, it's overwhelming because it's a failed system. So in a failed system, you're trying to find some empathy, compassion to deal with children's problems. It will not work. We need a separate, dedicated system. We need to be equipped for that infrastructurally and as a society. So one of those things about society's rejects being asked to be dealt with by the criminal justice system, that whole model needs reversal when it comes to children. There are no rejects for children. There is nothing called a failure for a child. We have to change the language itself. No child is a failed child. Unless we come to that point, we can't make the first right step.
We have a very poignant question from Raju. This is about one moment or one incident in your life, experience that made you tell this story, Vidya.
So, this is one particular case that I'll never forget, which I have narrated in the film as well. This is a little girl who said, Amma, நான் உங்க கூட இருக்கேம்மா. எனக்கு நடந்த மாதிரி வேற எந்த குழந்தைக்கும் நடக்க கூடாதுமா. You know, that stayed with me, and when the first opening of the idea came, that child's case was the first that came into my mind. And she was the first, her case was the first case of child abuse in the whole country that I managed to get conviction. And what was that conviction? You know, it was only 6 months of jail for the abuse that happened on her. It was just 6 months jail and 5,000 rupees fine those days. That's all. And then the lady walked out free. The lady was a government staff nurse. Now, that child, when I told her, she had to stay in the juvenile home to be a party along with me because she couldn't be called from her native place. Such a resolve that child had. You know, what are we talking about? She could have just said, no, I want to go back home. I don't want all this. But she stayed. And I got to see her 3 years ago. She is now a superintendent of a juvenile home and she's doing very well. So that was a very heartening thing for me as well. And I'm happy that most of them are still in touch with me. Many of the children who I have written, you know, with prayers, their future, many of them have gotten back in touch with me. And that is something that will always stay with me as a reason for writing this book.
She talked about the film. That film has been beautifully produced by Brand Up Consultants, helmed by Usha Ramesh. Are you there in the room?
She's just outside.
And Anirban Dasgupta. So a round of applause for them for bringing out such a beautiful film. With that, we wrap up this evening. Thank you all for being here, for listening. Let's listen more to children. We meet you again with the book, with questions. If the media is here, please cover this, cover the stories on juvenile justice. The children need to be heard, not just in Chennai, but beyond Chennai. Elections are not everything. The stories on elections can wait. Children need you. Let's talk about that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muralidhar, Vidya, and Muralidhar. We have over 480 people watching it online, and let me do the honor of presenting the memento on behalf of MMA. Sir, can you step forward? Ramesh, can you come? Ramesh, what we give is all more book to read, sir. The topic is the book. Thank you. Come now. Come. For you. Thank you. Bye. Happy landing, sir. Good, madam.